You're listening to Building the Broncos with Nick Kendell and Carl Dumler, Broncos country's leading draft and scouting analysts. Get on over to milehighhuddle.com to sound off on all things Broncos.
Broncos country, and it is once again time for another episode of Building the Broncos. I am your host, Carl Dumler, and with me today, of course, is my good friend, Mr. Nick Kendell. Nick, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, doing pretty darn well. I mean, I guess all things considered, the world seems to be losing its spin on its axis, and things are getting chaotic. Working from home right now, don't know what that means for the hospital going forward. And the Broncos just made probably my least favorite move they've made in a couple free agent cycles. But, you know, that's life, and hopefully I'll be wrong on that, but don't want to spoil things too much, so we're just happy to be here, get a little bit of normalcy, and talk with you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if the worst thing that's happening to us personally today is Melvin Gordon getting signed, that's not too bad of a day considering what's going on in the world. So it is kind of at least nice that we can get angry about something other than things that really matter in this world today. I guess just having that nice little distraction, even if it is not great news for the Broncos. But we'll get into that because we're going to talk about every move they've made so far and kind of break down our grades, our thoughts on why the Broncos did it and why it makes sense or doesn't make sense. And so make sure that you're following us on Twitter. You can find me at Carl Dumler MHH and Nick at Nick Kendell MHH. And you can follow the podcast Twitter account at BTB Football Pod. And make sure you subscribe to our show wherever you listen to podcasts and leave us a rating. Also, don't miss out on all of the great content that's coming out of milehighhuddle.com of the Maven Coalition and Sports Illustrated. Also know that this podcast is powered by Overtime Media.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Well, Nick, it kind of feels weird because we skipped last week's second episode. And so kind of getting back into the swing of things of not having the live audience. I didn't even shave today. So
I haven't
my
showered
wife,
yet.
she's like, yeah, my wife goes, aren't you getting ready to do your show? And I said, yeah. She goes, well, aren't you going to do something with your hair and your beard? And I was like, thankfully, yes, they cannot see me today. But yeah, the whole working from home thing, it's kind of hard to really want to get motivated to look good, I guess.
Yeah, you have
presentable.
You have a good point there. And I haven't showered today. I definitely have a smell coming on, and I'm going to be recording with Eric here later, so I'm going to need to shower after this. But yeah, no, it's working from home. It's definitely been hard. I mean, I've had coffee all day. Honestly, just because it seems like so many people are going to get this COVID that I need to be doing a better job with my water intake for when I do inevitably get sick, I can help combat it. So that's a PSA for everyone. Make sure you're upping your water intake.
And do not take ibuprofen.
I'm not sure how valid that is.
Oh, okay.
There's been a little bit.
Okay. But anyway, yes, listen to Nick. He knows much better than I do on this kind of stuff. So yes, definitely be drinking your water. I've had a gallon jug with me everywhere I go for the last few days. And so definitely been running to the bathroom a lot. Hopefully I can make it through this whole show without having to go. But, all right, let's get into some actual football content here and just talking about the Broncos, everything they've done. I think the kind of crazy thing is, because the Broncos have kind of spaced out all the moves that they've made, it's kind of felt like at times maybe they haven't done as much as some other teams. And of course, they haven't done as much as like the Miami Dolphins, who had how much money? I mean, $100 million to spend this offseason. So, of course, they were going to be able to throw money everywhere. But for the Broncos, the very first move that they really started with was trading for A.J. Bouye with a 4th-round pick to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And just kind of give a rundown of what he brings, not just as a player, but I mean, just contract wise. This year, he's going to have a $13.4 million cap hit. Next year, $13.5 million. And then, of course, that's his deal will be done. But nice thing for the Broncos is, let's say he continues on a downhill trend, because he did have a down year last year. The Broncos can cut him. No dead money. Very nice. He's only 28, so should still have 2 to 3 years of real prime playing ability left. And of course, we know that Fangio has wanted him for a long time. I think it was back in 2017. He tried to sign him before the Jacksonville did, or 2018.
I believe that's right. When the Bears, instead they got Prince Mukamara, I believe, but he was trying hard to get A.J. Bouye, and I think they offered Bouye, don't quote me on this, but I think they offered him more value but actually he would make more money in Jacksonville because of taxes.
Yep, that's exactly right. That's that's a nice little bonus that Florida teams have. Even though Florida teams have been really bad for a long time, they haven't taken advantage of that. But anyway, Broncos trading for this player. What are your thoughts here just initially on A.J. Bouye being brought to the Broncos?
I like it a lot, especially when you consider the value. I mean, giving up the San Francisco 4th-round pick, you're playing with house money there, and taking care of one of your bigger needs, which was cornerback. They still have a need at cornerback, considering Bouye and Callahan both have injury concerns, but taking care of at least one of those cornerback needs before free agency even opened, and then, again, with hindsight, seeing how much Byron Jones and Bradbury got paid in hindsight, I think it's a great move. I would give this one, honest to God, I'd give it an A. And because he also doesn't have any guaranteed money, they can restructure it to create some more cap down the line, maybe kick him some more guaranteed for himself, and also doesn't hurt the comp picks. So again, I think it's a really good move, one of the probably their second best move this offseason, but again, it's really close with the other move that they made.
Yeah, it's you're right. Looking at the Byron Jones contract and this guy just getting buku bucks thrown at him, it's nice to see the Broncos. Not that Byron Jones is a bad player. He's a good player to throw money at because Cowboys pretty much were very stupid with their cap on a lot of issues. But the fact that the Broncos got him pretty much at a discount that at one point, just even a couple years ago, he was an all-pro kind of player there for Jacksonville when they were having their great season and he was playing lights out. I think he's a great fit because of his click and close ability, playing in that zone where he can come down, make some plays. He did seem a little hampered this last year by injury, so we'll kind of see how that plays out. But it is kind of a medium risk, high reward kind of signing, in my opinion. And so I'm with you. This one has to get an A by the Broncos. I thought this is a great reason. They did a great job of showing why comp picks are so important. Yeah. Because it gives you this extra capital to make plays like this. There's going to be another trade that they made that we're going to talk about here in just a little bit. That again, when you have that kind of draft capital, you can make moves like that where you can get the guys you want, not have to compete with other teams, and get contracts that are easy to get out of, that give you a lot of room, or like you said, you can restructure them to make extra room, whatever you need to do. It just gives you so much flexibility on top of getting a very good player. And so taking advantage of other teams and them signing terrible contracts to then get good contracts on your cap, that's a great thing for the Broncos. So A grade for me, A grade from you. All right, let's move on to the next one here. And this one was about as no-brainer of a move for the Broncos as there is. They franchise tagged Justin Simmons. They're planning on signing him long-term. Sounds like every party involved knows that a deal is going to get done. But this is about as no-brainer as it gets this offseason.
Yeah, this was a great move. I'm hoping that they can get something taken care of here before the Texans got stuck in a weird area where they couldn't, they waited too long. There's like a deadline coming up. So hopefully the Broncos will take care of this, pay him beforehand. He's not the best safety in football, but he's definitely borderline top 5, good player, very versatile, great fit in the scheme. It was a no-brainer. The only question was, were the Broncos going to be able to work out a contract before? So that's still coming. I have no doubt about that. What it'll be, we'll see probably this summer if life is continuing back to normal at that point. Who knows? Things change by the day. But that's this is a no-brainer. It's even hard to grade. How can I? It's like a pass-fail. So they pass.
Yeah. There you go. Yep, I'll take that. I had a friend that he was the GM of the Broncos, and they had 31 other GMs running teams. And he thought he could get Justin Simmons, that he could let him hit free agency, then sign him to a big deal, and it wouldn't be that big of a deal. And all of a sudden, he said every team just went crazy throwing money at the guy. And he ended up losing Justin Simmons because he didn't tag him. And I'm just like, why would you not tag him? But anyway, yeah, pass. I'll take it. Move on. It's a great player. Hopefully they can get the long-term deal done. Justin Simmons can be here for a long time because he fits. Another thing that really kind of is a nice theme throughout all these signings is you got a lot of guys with pretty good durability compared to last year. I mean, A.J. Bouye, he's been nicked up here and there, but for the most part, he's been on the field. Justin Simmons hasn't missed a single snap in 2 straight seasons. Is that right?
I believe so. And he's been very durable. I mean, the 2 years ago wasn't a great scheme for him because he's kind of a little bit of a, he doesn't really have that range you want for a single high safety. He doesn't really have that tackling in-box ability that you want from the strong safety, where you have that cover 3, more of the dichotomized safety role. But if you're playing a scheme where you're playing more cover 2, cover 4, where you have those 2 back-end safeties, and his ability to come down and man up as well and play in the slot, that's huge. But it's a perfect scheme for him. I don't know what they're going to pay him. He's going to get probably a market-setting deal or close to it. Would I put him above somebody who plays close to the line of scrimmage and impacts the game more, like a Derwin James or a Jamal Adams? I don't know if he's that level of a player, but he is, incredible, good player. And just because, he's the next to get paid, he'll get a big deal. So when it comes, you're going to have a little bit of a sticker shock, but that's the price of business.
Right. Right now, top average per year is Eddie Jackson of the Bears at $14.6 million. So probably shouldn't shock anybody if he gets $15 million a year. Yeah. I think that's probably about where they're going to end up having to land. All right. Well, the other big signing the Broncos made.
Actually, before we go on, I guess if there's going to be anything that we say is a disappointment, it's that the Broncos didn't get this deal done before Fangio came. If they could have worked this out last year and, let's say, given him like a $10 million a year over 4 or 5 years, they could have saved themselves some decent money. But alas, that hasn't really been the Broncos' MO. Sometimes it helps them, sometimes it hurts them. You could have said that with Bradley Roby as well, and that definitely helped them. They didn't pay him, but that's the only thing in hindsight. Again, hindsight helps you a little bit, but it's like, I wish they could have gotten to it before he had this big season, and now he's going to be paid huge. So that's the only thing. Yeah. It's, I'm just being nitpicky. It's not the biggest deal.
Right. Well, and it is going to be interesting with the new cap guy, if things change of how they do contracts, when they do contracts, all those kind of things. Because I do think there has been a little bit of frustration for some in the front office of the Broncos not getting certain deals done before people hit free agency. And so I don't know. We'll see more next year how things change than this year, since they changed kind of mid off season this year. But all right. Well, we haven't really seen this guy's big contract of how it's been structured yet. And that's something I'm kind of waiting on here is Graham Glasgow, offensive guard, most likely right guard. It sounds like what the Broncos are going to do. 4-year deal for $44 million, $11 million a year, $25 million in guarantees. And he's only 27 years old. So for an offensive lineman, he's right in the prime of his career for the next 4 years, really. Were you really shocked that this was the first big signing for the Broncos?
I really was. I mean, all this talk that the Broncos were looking to do, pay defense and then draft offense, the fact that they signed the number 1 interior offensive lineman on the market, that caught me completely off guard. So, I mean, obviously, I think this whole COVID-19 outbreak has made it so that leaks and everything are much harder to come by, which, for better or worse, probably worse for us because we're used to actually getting some good heads-up information that's been a little bit harder to come across this season. But, this was a shocking move for me. And, it seems a little bit high at first. He's not a top, 5 guard in football, and he's getting paid, top 6 guard money. But
top 7.
Top 7. Okay.
7th, I think is what it is.
7th. So that's not bad at all. But then you look at it in comparison to Eric Flowers, what he got paid, and even comparison to Connor McGovern, the versatility, everything that Glasgow has, it's a really good deal. And again, if he was, the Joe Thuneys of the world, the Brandon Scherfs, he would have been tagged. He wouldn't have been on the market, but you're paying A money for B players, and that's how it is. So I don't mind it at all. I think it's a really good deal, and it makes it so the Broncos have a little bit more flexibility going in the draft. I mean, not only is he a good guard, but he can move to center if they need him to. So I really like the move. It's probably, this is the 3rd best move I think they've made this offseason. So that's what it's all about for me.
Yeah. Are you kind of surprised? Because I know when he first was taken, a lot of people thought, okay, yeah, he's going to be the starting center because another guy we're going to talk about is Elijah Wilkinson, gave him that 2nd round tender. And now it really does seem like people are saying he's going to be that right guard and have Wilkinson be a backup and leave a question mark there at that center position a little bit. Are you kind of shocked by that development with this signing?
A little bit. Yeah, I am. So I think there'll be a decent amount of pulls, which we saw a lot with Reisner last year. I mean, they used it at the NFL Combine actually to show how Dalton Reisner in the combine last year, the movement skills and why that matters to be able to hit targets outside of the numbers. And last year, the Broncos really could only do that to the right with the powers. They had also a lot of trap games as well. I think that's what they actually emphasized if we're going to get down to the X's and O's. But now they can go either way because Glasgow's a mover. I mean, Ronald Leary, good power blocker, but he was not a guy that you had pulling. He just did not have the feet for it. So now they can go either way with those traps, those counters, those powers, and be effective with it. So that's really exciting. And also Glasgow, I mean, the biggest thing, and we're going to harp on this later, at least I am, but, it's a passing league. Run game is kind of becoming like the mid-range shot for basketball where, you kind of have it in there to keep him honest, but from an efficiency standpoint, you'd rather have the layup, the ball at the hoop, dunking it, or shooting the three. So that's where the run game is coming from today. And Glasgow's really good. He might have a little bit of a downgrade in terms of the power at the point of attack from Leary to him, but his pass blocking upside is huge. And I think that's important, not only for the offensive line in general, but specifically for Drew Lock, who has had some questions about his footwork and his ability to, just if he feels pressure up the gut, his footwork can get a little bit cockeyed, a little bit wild. Not so much the case last year, but that's the biggest thing. So I like the move a lot, and I think that the fact that they're moving that offensive line, which has been actually a top 10 run blocking line the past few seasons, is now kind of trending more towards the pass blocking, which has the most value. It's just the most important.
Right. He's given up 1 sack in the last 2 seasons combined. So just a kind of a really good number there to think about when you're talking about pass blocking. And he's shown great feet and being able to hold up his spot and keep that pocket clean because, I mean, that to me, any more in the league, it seems like you really want that interior blockers to be able to hold up so you can have a pocket to step into. More so than always worrying about the outside guys. Like I think of like Tom Brady, his ability, it just always angered me. If Von Miller would get close with that hand and Tom Brady would take that one step up where his fingertips just couldn't get a hold of him. And I mean, that's what he's always been great at. Peyton Manning was always great at it. And so when you can have that interior pocket that will hold up, that they can't do those A-gap blitzes and get to the quarterback right away. I mean, that interior pressure, we've always talked about on the show that is one of the biggest things to disrupt any great quarterback. It doesn't matter who you are. If you can get interior pressure, you're going to have a lot of success against a quarterback. And I mean, that's even Patrick Mahomes, as long as you contain the edges so he doesn't all of a sudden swing to the outside. That's one thing that can really disrupt him. There in the first half of the Super Bowl, that's what it did. So getting back to Graham Glasgow, so his ability to hold up that way is huge for the Broncos. Like you said, his versatility, if they absolutely need him to go play center and they want to get the best 5 guys on the field and whoever's playing center isn't holding up, well, then you can put Elijah Wilkinson in there. It just gives you so much ability to kind of design the offense how you want to go about it. And so, yeah, I like the signing. You're right. It's a lot of money, but I don't feel like there's a whole lot of risk. I mean, this guy's missed 2 games in his career.
Yeah. And that's the biggest thing, too. They're kind of going the opposite direction with the offensive line there. I mean, Glasgow, versatile, durable, solid. They have very high floor. Is he going to be a guy that turns into a top 5 guard? Probably not. I mean, he actually is a little bit older as well. I think he's 27 now, might be 28 before the year starts. I think he was a redshirt senior at Michigan, so that's going to happen. But again, very high floor. It's this deal coming back and biting the Broncos in the butt like a Jawan James, like a Menelik Watson. I just don't think that's going to happen. Are they going to get the explosive return? Probably not. But, the stability, I think that's huge.
Yep, exactly. And so for the first 3 really big moves for the Broncos here this offseason, I thought I'm not going to say home run because but it's
a double.
Yeah, it's an easy double, and a standing up double.
Hit it the other way. Yep. They're playing the shift on you. You stuck the bat out. Well, guess what? You're going in there easy. If you had a little bit more speed, maybe even it would have been a triple. But, Carl, I'm not going to hold you to that.
I've lost a step in my age. I'm on the wrong side of 30 now. And so, yeah, but you're right. This is a very solid double for the Broncos. It's 3 players that are going to be quality starters for this next season and 3 guys that I think fit the system perfectly on the offense and defense and what they're looking for. And so I can't argue with anything that the Broncos did there. I know we're going to have a couple that we argue with as we move forward, but those 3 for the money that was spent, I think people should be pretty happy with it.
Yeah, I agree completely. And now the Broncos, I mean, you need to rely on those tackles, which is a concern. And, I guess what are the ramifications for Wilkinson in your regard? Where are you playing Glasgow?
Well, I mean, it all depends on what they're doing center-wise. Like, I still think the center class for the draft is really strong. So it wouldn't surprise me if the Broncos use the second or third round pick to get a center. And then you can have Glasgow there. And I think one of the biggest issues last year for the Broncos was they had zero depth on the offensive line. And so once one starter went down, of course, you had Juwan James go down early. And so then all of a sudden your top backup in Wilkinson had all of a sudden come in. I still hope that they pick up some kind of swing tackle, because I still would not like to have Wilkinson out there at that position. But I mean, maybe if they go get a Rimmers in free agency, or maybe they go to the draft and get a guy there with one of those mid-round picks. I'm not sure exactly, but I'm hoping they get somebody like that. But at least with Wilkinson, he has starting experience at guard. He has starting experience at tackle. Center, I'm not going to worry too much about him going there. You got other options for that. But he's a solid guy to have around. He's not a guy you want starting, but if he has to on a couple games, he can at least hold up halfway decent.
Yeah, I agree with you there. So it does sound like they want him to play guard. That's going to be the biggest thing for them. So we'll see how much value they get in that regard. But if he does play center, if that means that because they don't get a guy they like, or Patrick Morris doesn't live up to the hype they want, Elijah Wilkinson's better at guard, then that's the direction they can go. So I like that they can do that, but I'm just curious to see how it all stacks up.
Yeah, I mean, and that's something to keep in mind. This is 1 week of free agency done.
Yeah.
Not even a week yet.
Broncos are pretty close to done now, probably, though.
They are. There might be another couple little signings that they do, probably a cornerback that they might bring in, maybe an offensive tackle like Rimmers, depending on what his contract looks like. But beyond that, yeah, they're pretty much done. And so then we're going to have to get the picture of the draft and how they go and build the rest of the roster. But again, you just got to – the offseason is so long. You have to remember you got to look at the full picture of how this plays out. And so right now, what we have – it's showing a lot of promise moving forward for the Broncos.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. So we'll see what they do in the draft, and obviously year 2 bump for guy. I mean, Reisner should be better next year. We know that he came into the league with a little bit higher floor, so how much of a bump we're going to see, that remains to be seen. But based on models, based on the trends for guards, year 2, we should see a good bump. Hopefully we'll see a bump from Garrett Bowles with Mike Munchak and Juwan James. This is supposed to be an even year, so that means he should play. So really, I mean, the Broncos, I think the offensive line, I think they're more likely to be a top 10 unit this year than a bottom 10.
Yeah, if you look at the entire unit, I know some people will be sitting there saying, oh, Wilkinson's weak, or Garrett Bowles, Juwan James, how can you trust him to stay healthy and stuff like that. But if you look at the starting unit, just without injuries involved, they are a very solid unit. And they're not perfect by any means. They're not going to be the top unit in football. But you don't, we've already said it so many times, you don't need a top unit at the offensive line to be a great team. Otherwise, the Cowboys would be winning the Super Bowl every year.
Yeah, what about the Redskins? They sunk so much money into that line, and it didn't do diddly. So, yep, that's life. What can you do? So now that before we take a break here, Carl, what would you say is the grade for signing Graham Glasgow? 4-year, $44 million deal. We don't know the exact structure yet, but that'll be known soon.
I give it a solid B. I mean, he's an upgrade over McGovern, in my opinion, at both center or guard. And the money is not so out of control. It's not market setting or anything like that. I think it's about in line with about where he plays, actually. I was kind of surprised. I thought he'd get a little bit more. And so for the Broncos, I think it's a very solid B signing. It's a quality starter that's going to be out there every single game for them, that they can move around however they want to do it. But it's not one of those guys that sits there and says that he's, for me to give it an A, I feel like it has to be a guy that I feel like is going to change the outlook of the season. And I'm not sure that Glasgow changes the outlook of the season for me. Yeah.
I agree with you. I think it raises the floor. So I'm going to give it a B+, all things considered. I think it's a good move. And adding to the interior offensive line, especially pass blocking, I think is huge for Drew Lock with how he plays. So if he can get his feet, I mean, he can escape a little bit, like he can negate some of that edge rush issues. But if he's getting beat up the middle, he's done. That's when he gets happy feet, and that's when he has issues. So I like this deal a lot. I'm going to be a little bit more optimistic than you and give it a B+. So
you more optimistic? What?
I know. I'm either sunshine and rainbows or I am the end of the world. I'm a teenager when it comes to that. So we'll take a break, folks. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Alrighty, and we are back on the Building the Broncos podcast. I am Nick Kendell, along with Carl Dumler. Carl, take it away.
All right. Well, our next signing that we're going to talk about, we've already talked about this guy quite a bit, but the Broncos gave a second-round tender to Elijah Wilkinson, which is about $3.27 million is what they're estimating right now. They haven't released the numbers exactly yet, but for the Broncos, this gives them their top reserve for backup, and he can be a backup at left tackle, left guard, right tackle. I'm still hoping that they add to that because it sounds like with the new CBA, you can have 8 offensive linemen suited up on Sunday. Is that right?
I believe so. I haven't checked down the exact details of that yet. I'm guessing we're going to have a lot of dead time after free agency's over. So
right.
We'll be able to get into that.
Yeah, we'll dig into that a lot more. But for the Broncos, I know some people look at that $3 million for a guy that's a backup. And I sit there and say, for the offensive line, it's not a matter of if there's going to be an injury. It's a matter of when and how serious kind of thing. I mean, somebody's going to miss some time. Somebody's going to miss some snaps. And so having a guy that has experience at so many different positions coming in, being able to start for the Broncos. And yes, I know he was not a great starter last year. And yes, he is not a great fit at tackle if you have to have him start out there. But you look around the league, teams are struggling to find 5 starters. I mean, teams are struggling to find maybe 2 starters at times for the offensive line. So having a backup that has experience, that knows your system, that has worked with the coaching staff and can come in and give you at least a little bit, not perfect, but at least a little bit of something. I think this is, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer here again, kind of a pass-fail. Yeah,
I agree with you. I think it is a pass-fail. So I do think that the second-round tender for Wilkinson is a higher end pass because that $3.27 million is not bad. And when you have the versatility, the youth, still the upside that he has, I like him a decent amount. So I'm actually surprised they signed Glasgow because I thought I like highly enough of Wilkinson at guard, but I also thought that they liked highly enough of Wilkinson at guard. So, the worst case is he's a good swing guy. He can play guard and right tackle, though not the best at tackle, but wasn't Jake Rogers bad. So that brings some value. I mean, we saw last year with Billy Turner, that kind of guy gets paid. So That's 3.27. That's the cost.
Yeah, I was going to say Billy Turner got $7 million.
I think so.
Something like that last season. So, for this, I mean, that was the Broncos' 5th round comp pick is coming from Billy Turner.
Yeah.
That's kind of nice. But, all right. Well, then another second round tender that got handed out, Mike Purcell. And this signing, especially after missing out on DJ Reader, became very paramount for them to get done.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree with you in that regard. I do wish they could have signed him not to the tender. Like maybe if they could have got him for $2 million instead of the 3.27, I would have preferred that in regard, but we're penny pinching at that point. So I think it was once they missed out on Reader and the market for, I also think they tried and they were close to signing Jordan Phillips as well. I believe that's what the talking heads have said. And also there was some interest in Michael Pierce. Granted, he got paid by the Vikings coming off of a poor season. So I wish they could have maybe signed him to a $2 million deal, maybe even a 2.5 instead of a 3.27. But I think that's not the worst when you can consider that's him coming in and, you're guaranteed to have your starting nose tackle who was pretty solid last year. Is he going to offer anything in regards to rushing the passer? Probably not. He is what he is. He's a very simple, easy to find, run stuffing, one gap or two gap, 0/1 tech, but the Broncos need that in this defense, and he can fill that role at a decently cheap price. So I give that one more of a C than a pass fail because I think they probably could have got him for probably a little less, but instead of the headache of him potentially moving on, they just bringing it back.
Yeah, he was PFF's #1 rated defensive stopper in the NFL this last year for defensive line.
And I definitely think there's something to be said about that, but that's within the air bar of 15.
Yeah.
So he could have been the 15th best run stuffer. And granted, he was also put in position where it was obviously running downs. So like where he was used and how he was aligned and whatnot was very much situationally based. So he did his job. There's value to that. Granted, it's a nose tackle, which, I mean, we're going to kind of conflate this here, but listening to Fangio talk about the Broncos at linebacker and saying they're going to play more 6 defensive back sets, how many snaps is Purcell actually going to get? That's a fair question. 30%?
Yeah.
35%? Maybe less? So the nose tackle is a dying position. There's still some value to it if you can rush the passer, but it's just, if you're stopping the run, that's okay. I mean, look at the Chiefs last year. They took off their 2 best run-stuffing linebackers for guys who were essentially safeties, and it made a huge difference in their defense because stopping the run, while it's kind of cliche for coaches and whatnot and fundamentals, in the NFL, it doesn't really matter. Not so much, at least. Not from a dollar cents amount. So bringing it back, good for the fit, good, okay for the price. So I'll give it a C. And it's almost as much because they didn't overpay for a pure run-stuffing nose tackle.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'll be more optimistic, and I'll give it a C+. Mm-hmm. There you go. See, now I'm the optimist, but I had to give it back. I can't lose my title of optimism, but no, he's a pretty easy signing for the Broncos. Doesn't cost a whole lot, but it doesn't really cost too much if they lose him either. So I'll take it for sure. All right, well, let's get to maybe the shock of the offseason for the Broncos here. They traded for Jurrell Casey of the Tennessee Titans and only gave up a 7th round pick.
That was a great move. There's no other way to put it.
Yeah. If there's an A+ move this offseason, this is it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's no brainer.
Although the Bouye one, I think, deserves some hype as well. Like, I think Bouye, because he's younger, and the fact that, okay, I put Casey's number 1, no doubt. But I think Bouye needs a little bit of hype as well. I think both of those were great, fantastic moves.
Yeah, I guess a little bit of it is just like Bouye is coming off such a down year.
Yeah.
And Casey didn't have his best season by any means. And so, I mean, if either of them are going to have a bounce back year, I think Bouye stands the better chance. But Casey, even in a down year, was still a Pro Bowler.
Yeah.
And still a really rock solid guy. I saw some people post a video of when they were playing the Broncos and they tried to block him with 4 guys. They still couldn't stop him. And so Casey's been one of my favorite players in the NFL outside of Denver. And part of me is sitting there going, I want to go buy his jersey just because I've always loved his game.
He's been one of the most underrated defensive linemen.
He has. And he is just every single play bringing 100% effort. He just destroys things that he shouldn't be able to destroy. His movement skills. He has a lot of plays where he's actually standing up from the 5 tech position. And he's in a stand-up position and going out there making plays. He can bend around the edge better than most big men can. He has a great first step. He's got a great punch. He's got some counter moves to add as a pass rusher. I just, like I said, there were a lot of bad deals for teams or really good deals, however you want to look at it, this offseason. I think this one is in that top 3 of really great deals for the Broncos. Or compared, for in the NFL, or really bad deals for Tennessee. I mean, the only ones that I'd really put above it would be the one with the Cardinals and the Texans. That one was really bad. I think everybody knows how bad that one was. I mean, that's historic bad. Yeah. But I would put this one pretty close to not close to that one, but I would say in that next tier of moves where you're just sitting there saying everybody is sitting there saying how great of a move this is for the Broncos and just how head scratching this is a little bit for the Titans. Like, I understand it's a salary cap dump, but there's other players I'd feel a lot better about dumping salary for. And I mean, they're getting ready they just paid a quarterback a ton of money, paid him more than what Tom Brady's getting from Tampa Bay. They're going to pay a running back probably record setting money, and they're letting go one of the best defensive linemen in football.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. The reason they're doing it is to free up some cash because they're going to pay a running back, which is something I don't believe in. We'll find out soon enough.
What?
But, tagging Henry. And granted, I think the Chargers, last year had it right where Gordon said, I'm going to sit out. Well, okay, la-di-da. Good luck. They honestly should have tried to trade him. That would have been the move. And I think the Steelers tried to do that as well, and they probably should have done that with Le'Veon Bell. But that's another debate entirely. But this is a good move. I know that they added my boy, Justin Simmons, last year, so they could make this move, and maybe they can make another move. A guy like Clowney is still out there, would make a lot of sense for the Titans, given Vrabel's from the Belichick tree, and Clowney would make a heck of a lot of sense in that type of Patriots-esque defense. But, this is a great move. And the thing, you didn't bring it up, but Casey is so good in twists and stunts, and that is something that Vic Fangio loves to do to manufacture pressure without having to send blitzers. So if he can create a little bit of chaos and send two guys down the same gap, one of them gets there first, occupies the attention, and then you have a guy coming around like Von Miller or maybe one of those linebackers coming up the same gap when there's now space because Casey twisted or stunted. That's something that, this defense, I'm expecting to see it a lot. So I'm really excited about this move, and he definitely adds probably one of their best interior defensive linemen since they've had with Malik Jackson and Derek Wolfe during his earlier seasons. Now, Derek Wolfe is still really good. I'd like to see him back in Denver, but that's another debate.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, those twists and stunts, this is what, when he was with the 49ers, Justin Smith did so well of occupying blockers, of being able to free up, what's his name? I can't remember who they had there as their pass rusher. But anyway, had some career-setting years. And so Casey being able to do that or be able to rush the passer himself, Fangio has shown defensive linemen love playing for him because they get – it's not just that they're there to occupy space. They're there to actually go make plays. And on top of that, really, if you look at his contract, again, here's another one because they traded for him. He has no dead money if he gets cut. And so it's a deal that they can work if they need to free up some cap space. If he gets injured, they can cut him. There's nothing there. And then really the money-wise, it's pretty in line with what you would kind of expect. $11.8 million this year for a cap hit, $12.3 next year, $13.9 in 2022. And so for the Broncos, it's just such a high reward move here for a 7th round pick. I'm still baffled by this one. I still don't know why Titans couldn't get more for him. I think that's the part that, it's not that they traded him. It's more that all they could get was a 7th round pick for a player of Casey's ability.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I'll give this one an A. A+.
Yeah, A+ from me.
So, and some of this deal does become guaranteed. I'm not sure the specifics, like in a couple days, but we'll definitely. So there might be some renegotiations there to change the deal a little bit. It's not like the Bouye deal where none of it is guaranteed. So that might change how the Broncos attack this. There might be some readjustment there to create a little bit more cap space, maybe kick some salary down the line or guarantee some more this season. But, he's cost-controlled for 3 years. And again, another deal where it doesn't impact the Broncos as far as comp picks returning. So the only one so far that's going to, the only one we talked about so far that's going to impact compensatory picks for 2021 is the Glasgow signing, which should be negated, which would negate Connor McGovern. So
exactly. All right. So then we got some of the smaller deals that the Broncos did. Agreed to a 1-year contract with Devante Baasby. We knew that they weren't going to give him a restricted free agent tag, and they wanted to get him for less. They thought they could get him for less just because of his injury and just such limited film that he had this past season, but he did show some promise. So, that's it's a nice depth move for the Broncos. Gives them a nice guy that showed, like I said, a little bit of promise. I think he's a great fit in this system and a guy that I think really loves being here in Denver as well.
Yeah. I agree with you. I'm excited to see him. So that'll be there's no way to be not optimistic about that. It's kind of like what I wanted with Purcell. They didn't put that tender, so that way they could sign him to us. So Hopefully high upside, because now the Broncos have made a move where they're probably not going to be able to make another splash, at least a decent splash at cornerback. We'll see. But that means that Baasby is going to have to probably step up. And also in regards to Yadam potentially moving to safety. So that's something that hasn't been spread around yet. We'll see if it remains to be true, but that's an interesting one. So I like that move. It's a pass-fail one. They passed. They brought him back. Actually, I'll give it a little bit even better. I'll give it a B because they brought him back for less than the tender.
There you go. And then we get to the backup quarterback spot. something that we were wondering what the Broncos were going to do. Always kind of thought that they'd bring in a veteran more so than rely on Allen or Ripien. And so then they bring in Jeff Driscoll of the Detroit Lions. 2-year, $5 million deal. Allowed them to then, they just recently cut Flacco. So, that was kind of a no-brainer decision. Was this about what you thought they would be trying to spend here on the backup quarterback spot, or were you thinking a little bit more, like a Chase Daniels kind of deal? How were you thinking the backup quarterback spot was going to go?
I thought that they would spend a little bit more, maybe a Chase Daniel, maybe even be in the market for Nick Foles. Granted, seeing what he got paid, not the case. Or, I thought maybe he'd be a cheaper trade than a 4th-round pick, I believe, is what the Bears sent. But this is a guy who, from my viewing, is much better than Brandon Allen. Don't let that one game against the Browns where Cortland Sutton and Noah Fant made some ridiculous plays change your mind. And Cortland Sutton in that Vikings game as well. But I think this is a guy, he's got tools. I think he was the number 1 overall recruit in the country when he went to Florida and then transferred out. I think he's got some upside, but he's not really a sure thing. I kind of wanted a little bit more of a veteran presence, but 2-year, $5 million deal, and the second year is this year's only 1.75. So if he doesn't turn out and end up being a good backup, they can just move on. So really, it'd be really hard to be upset with this deal. So I give this one a solid B.
Right, like you said, it's a guy with some starting experience, but he's not a guy that's going to threaten Drew Lock either. I'm tired of the quarterback controversy. You wanted to show that you're all in on Drew Lock. This kind of signing shows you're all in on Drew Lock. If you bring in like a Nick Foles, that might be showing that you're trying to hedge your bets a little bit and hope that Drew Lock develops. But if he doesn't, then you got this kind of player sitting there. Jeff Driscoll, I'm sorry, you're not going to be the starter. You're not going to beat out Drew Lock. So I did expect a little bit more to be spent, but overall, keep the quarterback room cheap, which allows you to go make some bigger moves elsewhere. And it allowed them to go spend the money that they have and still have a little bit more that they could maybe go spend this offseason. We'll kind of see how that plays out. But, and maybe kind of allowed them to do this next deal. I almost hesitate to bring this one up because I don't want to make you angry. I went home and told my wife, I said, Nick's a little upset today. She's like, oh, about the coronavirus? Said, no, about a Broncos signing.
It's good to be mad about things that aren't politics / the end of the world.
Right, yeah.
Guys, it's not the end of the world. That was a joke. It was a joke. Do not go out there and buy all the food and toilet paper. So.
I've already bought so much ammo you would not believe.
Oh.
I'm just kidding.
Oh, man.
We've got a bunker in the backyard.
You're a different kind of preacher.
Down. Yeah. There is a movie called Machine Gun Preacher. And it's an interesting movie, actually. It's based on a true story. But and it is a preacher with a machine gun. I won't spoil it too much, but anyway, Melvin Gordon signed by the Denver Broncos, and I don't think it's so much that they signed Melvin Gordon. That's the issue. I think it's the issue that they paid him ridiculous money. We got a 2-year contract, $16 million with over $11 million of it guaranteed. Now, we still need to see what that means, guaranteed, because sometimes that's injury guarantees. Sometimes the contract that gets put out there is more from the agent's side of things, trying to pump up how great of a contract he got his player. So I want to see the full breakdown, and maybe we'll have that by the time this actually gets released tomorrow. But yeah, Melvin Gordon, I was thinking that he'd get like a 1 year, $3 million deal. And so to see him get $8 million a year,
$13 million guaranteed.
13 million, yeah. It was shocking, and not in a good way. I mean, we go from A+ with Jurrell Casey to, gotta say, F for Melvin Gordon deal done. What is that the grade you'd give it? That's what I'm giving it.
I'm giving it a D, because that is I think because it's only a 2-year deal, that is something that I like. I need to see how the contract is allocated right now. Maybe it's injury guarantees in it. So like if like the Jeff Hireman, where it's like so many, or the roster games played guaranteed for year 2, where they can maybe move on from him. if he gets injured, which has been the case for him recently. But I really don't like the signing. I think there's a lot of, this is going to probably tick off some listeners, but I think there's a lot of, Madden-esque highlight boy type of fans where, he was really good in college in Wisconsin, a first-round running back, so there's a lot of flash involved there. But I honestly think he's been the second best running back for the Chargers the past couple seasons. Austin Eckler brings so much more value. I mean, not only is he a good runner, but he actually can run routes and does things down the field as a receiving back, which, the dump off to a running back, there's really not very much value in that. It's more value than a pure plotting running back, but that's the EPA involved in that. The expected points averaged is much lower. So I just really do not like this deal. I would have much rather allocated those resources in regards to signing another defensive lineman or another cornerback. I mean, the Broncos are losing Derek Wolfe and Shelby Harris right now. They brought in Jurrell Casey, so that's a plus, but are you ready for Draymond Jones to be a full-time starter? You could have probably brought Derek Wolfe back at that contract, and that would have given you a really good rotation on the defensive line. Or you could have signed another cornerback for that money, which would give you 3-4 potentially good cornerbacks, which, again, the data shows that you need depth on defense. It's more important than anywhere else. So, and on top of that, can you trust Bryce Callahan? I mean, I don't know if I can. And AJ Bouye, it's not being talked about, but he's had injuries. And he's missed games, and he's not been the same when he's had those injuries. So I don't know, man. I think you can find running backs anywhere, anytime. I mean, the Broncos of all teams should know that. They found Terrell Davis was an undrafted guy. The pass blocking or the run blocking mattered the most there, and Terrell Davis good back, but you can find those guys. Then you have C.J. Anderson followed by Phillip Lindsay, both undrafted guys that you found. So I don't get it. You have all these savings, and then you just kind of blow it when you pay a guy like Melvin Gordon, who honestly has not been that good. So I don't know. I am very skeptical about this signing. I hope that I am wrong in hindsight, and I would love for people to at me when Melvin Gordon is an All-Pro next year. But watching him, I'm not impressed. He does not look like the same back that he was at Wisconsin. Granted, there's how many Wisconsin backs have worked out. You got to scout the player, not the helmet. But there's a volume argument to be had there. And again, running backs, I would say they're like the fifth most important thing in regards to a run game success. Like the spacing mattered. The most important thing is how many players are in the box. That is the most important thing in a running game success, and that is dictated based on personnel. It's the reason that Todd Gurley was so good a couple years ago, because how Sean McVay was able to use 11 personnel and vacate the box to create space, to create rushing lanes. So, and then there's obviously the blocking, how respected is the quarterback, the weapons on the outside. It's just running backs. There's no such thing as a generation or a franchise running back. Every single running back is a system running back because of how the position is played. So I don't like the move. I would not have made it myself. I'm not going to give it an F just because I'm trying not to be too angry, and it's only a 2-year deal. It keeps the Broncos from using a top 100 pick on a running back, which matters. But I don't like the move. I think there were other pieces that would have been far more beneficial. The Broncos could have found a veteran minimum level running back that could have brought closer value than they're going to get for the scrap heap cornerback / defensive lineman they're probably going to bring in now.
So any thoughts then to the fact that he's played 24 games over the last 2 seasons, has 23 touchdowns, has been one of the better goal line running backs in football. I think he's rated number 2 when actually the boxes are loaded, of being able to make something out of nothing.
There's definitely some benefits to that, and that's definitely important to look at. But again, running games themselves, if they're not explosive, don't even bother. And if what a running back does is dependent on so much other than that running back. I mean, we've seen that Le'Veon Bell is a perfect example. Really good running back for the Steelers, blah, blah, blah. How much of a drop-off was there when they went to D'Angelo Williams? How much of a drop-off was there even going to James Conner? Really negligible. And then you see teams like the Chiefs going from Kareem Jackson to Damian Williams, probably almost like no drop-off there. And then the 49ers going with Rashid Morstead. I can't even say the name right, for goodness sake. Who is the other one? Burrito's another one. So running backs, you can find them anytime, anywhere. The running game is kind of like we talked about. It's like the long-distance mid-range jump shot where you can use it to keep defenses respected, but if you're relying on that, if that's your bread and butter, you're probably losing. So I don't know. I think that paying him that much money makes me not happy. It seems like I saw a funny tweet. It's like the Broncos making Melvin Gordon the 5th highest paid running back per season is like the worst guy in your office in fantasy football being in charge of a team. It's just the numbers don't make sense. It's more of a name. So I don't know. I really do not like this signing, but I'm waiting for the contract structure. I'll give it a D for now.
Okay. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you. Like I said, I was okay with the signing when I was thinking it was at most going to be $5 billion. I mean, it seems like a lot of most running backs, it seems like, that are halfway decent are getting about $5 million a year that have been hitting the market. I'm thinking, obviously, Gurley just got $5 million. I would have been fine with that for the Broncos. I mean, yeah. I know Gurley's been hurt, but I mean, Gordon has too. And, but still, I mean, $5 million, it's a lot of money, but it's still, in the grand scheme of things for the NFL, not a huge investment. But, when you're talking $8 million a year, then you're saying, hey, we have an idea for this guy, what he's going to bring. And I still think he does bring some value. So, I mean, it's not a complete bust, like you said, but it's just a bit surprising that that's where they would decide to spend their money. And especially, it does seem like we were told that they're going to invest in the defense and draft for the offense. Well, they've spent a lot of money on that offense this year, this offseason.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't have a problem with the Glasgow signing because I think that is great for the passing game and the run game. And I understand the signing of Driscoll because they need a backup quarterback better than Allen. But this one, it's a little bit frustrating. But here's a couple other, just real quick. The last signings, Broncos did sign a new long snapper, Jacob Bowmanmoyer. I think that's how you say his name.
They just rotate him. Rookie contract, 4 years. Thank you. Next.
Yeah. That's. But it means your Iowa boy's going by.
Yeah. That's okay.
What?
Yeah.
And you're okay with an Iowa person leaving?
Yeah. I mean, if they traded Josie Jewell for a third, I'd be happy. So
that's true. I'm
down to the brass tacks, man. I'm just basic. I pull for them no matter where they go. And we're talking long snapper here. La-di-da.
Yeah. All right. Well, then last signings, the ERFAs, the exclusive rights free agents. That's what that stands for. If you didn't know, this is usually these are the bottom tier guys of your roster. These are really cheap contracts. They're no-brainer moves if the player brings any kind of value to your roster. And so then they did that for Tim Patrick. Makes sense. He's been, this last year, he's pretty much the number 2 wide receiver for the Broncos after Emmanuel Sanders left. So it makes sense to keep him on the roster. And then Deontay Spencer is another wide receiver that they're bringing back. Brought a huge value for the return game. Broncos finally seem to have found their guy that they can trust back there. And then we have Shaquille Taylor and Trey Marshall for the defense. And again, both guys, I mean, makes sense. Doesn't hurt the Broncos if they have to cut them, if there's better players out there. But at the same time, it's nice to fill out your roster with these kind of players. I mean, these are all kind of pass fail and they're pretty easy passes just because, like I said, if they bring any kind of value, they're a pass when they're this low of a contract.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. So, I mean, Tim Patrick, pass. Trey Marshall, bringing him back. I don't even know Shaquille Taylor, so got pass. And Deontay Spencer, pass. Also, they're bringing back Jake Rogers.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, well. I forgot him.
So these are all these are guys that Tim Patrick is probably Trey Marshall and Tim Patrick will probably make the team. Deontay Spencer also probably, but we'll see there. But the other ones, you have 90 guys and you're going to cut down to, 58? I don't know, the new CBA. I don't know what it is, but you need bodies.
Yep.
Essentially. So these are bodies. Some of these are bodies. So that's fine. We'll see what happens. Tim Patrick, though, on an ERFA, that's solid value. You don't want him as your number 2 going into the season, which is what he is right now. So that's yikes, but that's life. So pass all around there. So we should take another break because we're already long. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
And we're back. Carl, we don't have much time left, so let's get this going.
Okay.
What do the Broncos have left to accomplish as far as free agency goes?
Well, I mean, the easy one is number 2 wide receiver. You just were talking about Tim Patrick being number 2 right now and that being a yikes. Yes, Broncos need at least a number 2, if not a number 3 wide receiver. That's the easy spot. Center is another position that they at least need to add competition to it. And then a coverage linebacker is another spot that the Broncos tried to get some guys. I mean, they made contract offers to about 3 or 4 different guys in free agency, and other teams just came in with some bigger deals. So it shows the Broncos know they want to get somebody that can do that. Thankfully, this is a draft that has some coverage linebackers in it. And so that's kind of the nice thing is center, wide receiver, and coverage linebacker are actually pretty deep positions in the draft.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. So, this Melvin Gordon deal, man, I'm still kind of spinning in circles, but I really would have liked Denver to have signed another cornerback, another defensive lineman, and maybe a swing tackle like Remmers because he's shown better at tackle than Wilkinson. And then also I would really want a Jeremiah Tauchu back because he was really good down the stretch last year, and he's got some coverage ability too. I think he's a great scheme fit. I think he's actually pretty underrated, and I'm surprised he hasn't been signed yet given how bad this edge class is in the draft. So those are the things. Obviously, you have a lot of picks in the draft, but I wanted to be able to go into the draft with practically 0 holes besides wide receiver because you're going to be able to get a solid wide receiver in the top 100. I have 0 doubt about that, and a youth tackle as well. But I don't know. I just paying the running back that much, I'm just pulling my hair out. I definitely have some grays from this whole COVID thing to this now and everything else. Obviously, those two things are not the same. People are going to die from this virus, but that's not to equate the two, but those are my biggest concerns. I don't know how much money they're going to have left. There might be some maneuvering around yet, but that's a good chunk of cash. Yeah, 5th highest running back paid now, only 2 years, but it's just, I would have rather have had the borderline starter on the defensive line or at cornerback than paying a running back big money.
Yeah, I do wonder if they will kind of restructure one of these 2 deals of Bouye or Casey to maybe open up a little bit more so they can add after that kind of contract just handed out, just because I do think they know they have about 2 or 3 other holes that they still want to fill in free agency. And yes, they won't be quality starters, but they'll be quality depth players. And that's kind of been the nice thing this offseason is the Broncos have added quite a bit of depth compared to last season. Last year there was no depth on this roster. This year I feel much better about where they are when it comes to a starter going down and a guy needing to come in and make a play.
Yeah, I agree with you.
All right, so favorite move.
My favorite move, I'm going to say Bouye, just because I want to leave you the other one. But Bouye, I think, deserves a little bit of hype. He did really well, and Elway did really well with that move, and to not have to be desperate for a cornerback because, I mean, the cornerback market was pretty wacky. So giving up a 4th that you already had playing with house money, that's a great move.
All right, well then, yeah, I'll go the opposite, the obvious one here. Jurrell Casey for a 7th round pick. Just from everything that I hear, it's not only that he's a great player on the field. Listening to a bunch of Tennessee people talk about him, he is such a great guy in the community, a great guy in the locker room. And I mean, he's already talking about understanding like the Orange Crush defense of the past. So he's already like showing he knows Denver. A lot of guys come in, they call it, Broncos Nation or something like that. And you're like, that's not what it is. Yeah, it just frustrates me when I hear that because I'm like, you don't know who we are. You will know eventually. But the fact that he's already showing that he knows a lot about Denver just really makes me think this is going to be such a great guy for the entire organization and the community. And again, for a 7th round pick, I mean, it's a throwaway pick. If you have lots of 7th round picks, that's not good. They're the guys you're just not wanting to have to try to outbid for undrafted free agency. And sometimes they are guys that you hand out for a favor to somebody. I won't mention who that was for, but yeah, so overall, love that one. Love the trades. Those are just so great. The Patriots have done that for years. And it's worked out really well for them, obviously. So it's good to see the Broncos taking a page out of their book and doing some of the similar things.
Yeah. Yep, I definitely agree with you there. So anything you want to talk about? Oh, great so far this offseason. I'm going to give Elway I'm going to give him a B+ because I think the Bouye deal and the Casey deal were so good that it outweighs being pulled down from the Gordon deal. And the Gordon deal, again, there's some positives. It's short term. They're not paying much on offense right now. They're not paying anything really for wide receiver, running back, or quarterback. So they actually have a little bit of house money to deal with. It's just, you blew that error bar that you had in regards to that finance. So I'll give Elway a solid B+.
Okay, I'll go an A-, in big part because I feel like he's learned from past mistakes. Getting guys, like I said, that are durable, that are great locker room presence, that have even some pretty decent upside from where they were. And like I said, contracts that open things up for future deals. If the Broncos need to get out of this to make room for signing a Courtland Sutton or a Drew Lock, they can do that. They can open up cap space with very little issues. And so they've had a little bit of dead money over the last couple of years. That's not going to be an issue with a lot of the moves that they made this offseason.
Yep, that's life. So again, we'll see. And we don't even know how much money they have left right now. The cap obviously didn't expand as much as they were looking. So we'll see what happens. But that's going to wrap up today's episode of Building the Broncos, powered by Overtime Media. You can find Carl on Twitter at Carl Dumler MHH and myself at Nick Kendell MHH. Go on over to Mile High Huddle, an affiliate of the Maven Coalition and Sports Illustrated. You can follow the Building the Broncos podcast and all our other great audio content by subscribing to the Huddle Up podcast wherever you listen to your shows. You can follow us on Twitter at Mile High Huddle and at BTB Football Pod. For Carl, I'm Nick, wrapping up another episode of the Building the Broncos podcast. We hope you guys enjoyed it. We will see you soon. Make sure you at me if you disagree with my Melvin Gordon takes. And as always, go Broncos.
You've been listening to Building the Broncos. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.